one experience that I've had that really solidified this point for me was that you should let the data tell the story, not try and tell a story and fill it in with data. I think that's the wrong order. You can absolutely have and test hypotheses, but if you have some preconceived notion of what is true, you're probably going to be able to prove your point with data. And that is
That's good feedback.
That is the wrong order to do. So I always try as hard as I can to look at the data and say, okay, I think that this is true. Let me literally write it down as a hypothesis with my team. And okay, what do we need to do to test that hypothesis? And then go from there and then tell the story with data. But I think that the order is important. And then as far as what story the data tells, just trying to be truthful with it and
Sure.
leverage it to the best of your ability. For example, we're increasing some salesperson incentives because that's what the data said. Doing stuff like that is I think the right approach.
Let's go.
Welcome to The Move In, a senior living marketing podcast from Unlock Health, a full-service marketing partner for the aging services industry. Join us for candid conversations exploring the latest marketing strategies with the senior living community leaders and innovative solution partners who are moving our industry forward. Together, we'll build a community to build better communities. How clean is your data, and is it clean enough to trust for significant budget shifts? Hello, I'm Larry Williams, and welcome to the Move In Senior Living Marketing, powered by Unlock Health. In senior living marketing, data can truly make or break your strategy. If the numbers are messy, every campaign decision becomes a guess. But when your systems, reporting, and CRM notes are aligned, you start to see clearly what's really driving that cost per move-in, length of stay, and lifetime value. That's exactly where we're headed in today's conversation. I sat down with Carsten Ellsworth, Marketing Director at Avista Senior Living, to explore how he blends psychology, storytelling, and a data-driven approach to smarter marketing. From paid ads to SEO, from cleaning up data to building a tech stack that empowers sales teams, Carsten shares the lessons learned from testing, failing, and pivoting, and ultimately scaling across all communities. Here are a few things we discussed in this episode. Data-driven decisions, using clean data to guide strategy, track cost per move-in, and optimize lifetime value. Storytelling plus analytics, blending emotional storytelling with hard numbers to connect with families and drive results. In systems and flexibility, building the right tech stack, testing hypotheses, and pivoting quickly when the data says so. Let's jump into it. We are on the move in senior living marketing. I got Carsten Ellsworth with us. His title says Marketing Ninja, but he is the marketing director at Avista Senior Living. Carsten, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Larry. Great to be here. I appreciate you having me.
Yeah, thank you for joining us today, and shout out to Rachel Keller. Rachel connected us, and just within this industry, we always have these great connections, and just like Rachel, Karsten, meet Larry, y'all just connect. I'm sure some good things will come of it. We had a good conversation, and then at the end of that conversation, I was like, man, can you join us on the podcast? I just felt like you had so much knowledge to share that others need to hear. So thank you again for joining us. Being at Avista Senior Living, let's start there. Tell us more about what you're doing at Avista and more about Avista overall.
Well, at Avista Senior Living, I am the director of marketing at the corporate office. And so what do? A couple things. All of our advertising and branding, data analytics, maintaining the tech stack, making sure it's all interconnected, working well, providing sales support. I could keep going. I do a bunch of fun things. But at the end of the day, the only thing that really matters at the end of the day is that I make my sales team's lives easier so that they can make our residents' lives easier. That's how I view my entire job is, am I making it easier for us to sell and to bring this awesome service that we have to our residents?
Love that. I mean, just boiling that down to that. And you mentioned you do a bunch of fun things. I know marketing tends to get pulled in many directions, but at its core, I feel like you help sell and retain and really spread that positive message. One thing that really piqued my interest and why I asked you to join us for this conversation is, learning more about your background. You mentioned that you had a background in psychology in college and how that piqued your interest in marketing. And I'd like to learn more about that.
Yeah, I still remember the class. psychology 101 in Northern Arizona University. And I remember just being intrigued by it. It also comes from my mom, who is equally interested in this sort of thing. And so I think I got that from her. But I remember just thinking like, oh, this is how people think. Like you can map why people make decisions. And then you could potentially, for lack of a better word, manipulate those decisions. And so I always thought that that was interesting, the theory of getting people to do things for good or for evil. Hopefully we don't use our skills in marketing for evil. But then that always stuck with me. And then later on in life, as I was working with a mentor to figure out where my career path would go, it was like, oh, well, I can use those skills in marketing. I can use that to help. Again, you could use it for evil, but I don't. You take a good company that provides a service and you connect it with a good person who needs that service, who has a need. And that's the beauty of marketing, is just bringing those two things together, using these cool skills that I've learned and many more that I will learn to bridge that gap. It's really fun.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And you're right about those benefits when it comes to why we think what we think. So it is pretty incredible on that front. So how did you go from that into marketing in college, and then from marketing to Avista?
Well, I was actually in college. I started at Avista as an intern, and I've moved my
Hmm.
way up in the organization. Been with the company for 8.5 years at the moment, and I was in college, and I knew the CEO and founder, Chris Woolley, who's amazing. I hope he sees this. Shout out, Chris. I saw on LinkedIn that he was the founder of a company. I didn't know what it was. I didn't know what Vista Senior. I didn't know. I didn't like expect to get into senior living. Let's say.
Sure.
But he was founder of something, and I needed an internship. So I reached out and said, let's talk. And so we met, and it went well. I got the internship. I think my first project was the website, which was like 4 website versions ago. But anyway, lots of things like that. Learned a ton. At the time, we only had, I think, 2 buildings, and then we quickly became 3. And now we're up to 29. So it's been a wild ride. But I started there, ended up going part-time, and then ended up going full-time, and it just keeps on going in that direction. It's been awesome.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible how we all made our way into senior living, and in what we've learned through that process. And I'm not going to speak for you, but for me, I know I've learned a lot about really society, connecting with others, and learning about about myself through this process. And I've really enjoyed that. And I'm curious to see if, like, what were some of the misconceptions that you stepped into when you went into senior living, and what are some of the things that you've learned through this journey?
Well, I don't think I went into senior living with any sort of preconceptions. My thing is I just love marketing. I
Yeah.
love understanding, like we talked about, psychology and understanding what makes people do like a buying decision, for example, what makes them make decisions like that. And then I did fall in love with senior living over time, because it is such a beautiful thing that we do. We're able to serve these seniors that have lived these amazing lives. And the interesting thing for me is the sales cycle. It's such an emotional sales cycle. It's a long sales cycle, a couple of months oftentimes, because this is a big decision, and it's fraught with emotional baggage. For example, there's an adult child, let's say an adult daughter, who needs to find senior living for their mom, and they've been taking care of them, and it's getting harder, and maybe mom has some cognitive issues, and so they feel like they're not enough. They feel like they can't do enough, or maybe they feel guilty because they want to go and do something else. So we have to help them through that process and those emotions. It's a very emotional sales process, and it's a very big sales process. And so we help them through that. And the way that I can help them through that is with good marketing, good branding. We're also fighting a perception issue where this generation that we market to, generally they look at senior living as like a sniff, like a nursing home is the word that they'll use, and there's some negative connotations from back in the day, and that's not really what the industry is like anymore. We always say that our communities are like a cruise ship on land. Like it's just totally different. So helping them see that, being able to tell a good story. We've been experimenting a lot with video in the last couple of years, and then also all other forms of media, all of our advertising, the website, all of that, trying to tell the story and break down those barriers. And then hopefully we've broken down enough of those barriers that once they get in touch with our sales team, that they're able to go deeper on them and then help them move in. So it's a really it's a noble thing that we do, and it's really a lot of fun, and it's an honor to do it.
Yeah, no, I appreciate what you said there, and it is a very emotional decision, and it's very complex as well. And what you said about telling that story, that's wildly important. And then how we really tell that story and get that message out. And when I say like we need to evolve that narrative of senior living. And one thing, something else that you mentioned in our conversation that I want to bring into this conversation, yeah, into this episode is really you highlighted the fact that you're a quote unquote data nerd. And so like when we think about merging the stories in the background and the emotional decision process and then pulling that together with data, that's where we need to be. And love to get your feedback on, when you started in, did you see the importance of data at that point, or is it one of those things that as you continue to grow in your profession that you really leaned in more into the data?
This was a fun learning experience for me when I was a little earlier in my career here at Avista. I don't know, 6 years ago maybe or so. I was the guy that was telling all of my leadership that we need to run paid ads. The paid ads are the way. If you just pay for leads, you will get them. And that's true. What I didn't see at the time was that it's not always cost effective, and certainly every market that we're in is so different. And some of the markets, for example, on Google Ads, as you probably know, of course it's an auction system, and so if there's too many people bidding up the keywords, then it becomes more expensive than the cost per move-in wasn't there.
Yeah.
So I was right that we were paying for leads, we were getting leads, and we were converting those leads into move-ins. But at what cost per move-in were we doing that? And so over time, as we got better with our data, we were able to look at that. And I had to go to my leadership and be like, I know I've been the guy for years saying that we need to devote everything to our paid search campaigns. I was wrong, and we need to fix it. And to their credit, they've always been wonderful. They're like, okay, let's take a look. We had been building the infrastructure that we have now to collect the data to make that sort of a decision. And so we said, okay, yep, cost per move-in for a lead that comes directly from paid search, and I'm usually talking Google there, was astronomically high. It was too high. It was not sustainable from a cost per move-in standpoint. So we said, okay, let's not do that. What should we do? And at the same time, the data was saying that organic was very good in a cost per move-in standpoint. And so our strategy just generally at Avista is a baseline layer of SEO is the main strategy that we use because of the cost per move-in, and the conversion rates are great. And then as needed, we'll layer in other things, usually Google ads, but oftentimes not Google ads. Some of our communities that doesn't work, some of the markets that doesn't work. And then we switch to Bing ads, or we switch to Facebook ads, depending on the needs and whether or not it's an awareness play or a lead gen play. There's a million, everyone is so different. And this is a big part of my job, but it's a lot of fun. And I was wrong in the beginning, and then I learned. And since then, we've doubled down on that. We've run countless experiments testing that hypothesis. We have robust data now. We use HubSpot, first touch attribution, and it daisy chains all the way through our three main systems: HubSpot, Welcome Home, Point Click Care, and back again. And we're able to say with a high degree of certainty how many leads, tours, move-ins, conversion rates, but then even more. I know I'm rambling a bit, but as you said, this is something I really enjoy. We did a huge audit for all of 2024 lead sources, 10,000 leads, 1,078 move-ins. And we appended all this data, like how much money did we spend on it was broken down by lead source. How much money did we spend on every single lead source? What was the length of stay of every single lead source? What was the cost per move-in of every single lead source? What was the average lifetime resident value, which is a little morbid, but by every single lead source? And with that data, we've continued to make more decisions, and it's informed our thinking. So there's certainly a lot of emotion in the sales process, but from our perspective, it should be analytical. We should test our theories. We should give it enough time to run our tests and then either prove or disprove them. But we continue to prove that what we've been doing has been working really well, and the data shows it. So I am quite a nerd for it.
And I love it. And I've jotted down so many notes. I have so many questions because you brought out like a lot of important parts to this process. I want to start at the beginning of you leaning into really the paid ads. And you mentioned that it was the wrong decision, but I kind of disagree with you. I think for you to come to that conclusion, you had to invest in it. And I feel like marketing, we don't know what we don't know until we lean into it and try different things. And so marketing is constantly trying, testing. You're going to fail some, you're going to succeed, but like you just said, once you figure things out, lean further into the data. The data does not lie, and we need to continue to really skate to where the puck is going. But we need to know where, what what the layout looks like, and the only way we can do that is through data. In something else you said, okay, let me ask you this: how many communities does Avista have?
We have 29.
29. And so, are you primarily in one region? Are you across a larger geographical footprint? What does this look like for Avista?
Yeah, it's all West Coast. So Washington, Idaho, Utah, Arizona, and New Mexico. Am I
Okay.
forgetting anybody? I think that's the five.
So when I think about that, I think about some of our clients, which is you never know what's going to work at a specific community and how it can range quite a bit. One place it could be paid ads, a next place, nothing with paid ads. They might really, hit it out of the park with radio or newspaper. You just don't know until you try different things, but then gather the data so you can reinvest in those efforts. As you really looked at the data and dug in deeper, where did you start? Was it through the CRM, or what was that starting point? Because I feel like sometimes data can be overwhelming, and a lot of times people don't really know where to start. And I naturally think that CRM is the best place, but I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, the data is only good as the story you tell, and you can't tell a good story if you don't have a good system. So we have good systems. HubSpot is what we use for First Touch. It's also what we use as a CRM for our lead handling service, NextWave. I'll shout out those guys. They're great. They do the chasing down basically for all of our digital leads. But then from there, that's interconnected with Welcome Home, which is, I'm on record saying that Welcome Home is the best in our industry. I love them. Sorry to all my friends at all the others. I know them all. They're great. But I love Welcome Home. I'm a big proponent of them. The two connect well together, and that's important as well. So we get the First Touch attribution stuff from HubSpot, and that goes into Welcome Home. So I have a lot of HubSpot dashboards and reports that I can go into if I want to really get granular with it. But for the most part, I've built translation workflows within HubSpot that take the words of the original source in HubSpot and translate it into the words that our sales teams and our ownership groups understand. And all of our reporting is based in Welcome Home. But none of that matters if the system doesn't work well. If your sales team isn't empowered to take good notes or to record information that we need to make these decisions, it's going to be useless. And so HubSpot in many cases informs the lead source, but then the sales process is captured on the Welcome Home side. And then we can use, and then that is connected to PCC, which speaks back and forth. And then all three of them work in that and back and forth on that rail system. And that allows me to, with a very high degree of certainty, say, okay, we got this many move-ins from this many sources. And there's some ambiguity sometimes. For example, the leads that come from digital, I know that they came from the lead source that it says because HubSpot has a really good track record, and I can trust that. Although I disagree with them on Google My Business being a paid search. That's a rabbit hole I'm not going to go down right now. We're working on fixing that. Anyway, I digress. There is also ambiguity. Yeah, that is another. Do you have a solution for that? Because I don't perform Stone either. But anyway, there is some ambiguity allowed, though, because you want to be able to flex. And so the salespeople, if somebody comes into a tour walk-in and they say, I saw you, I just drove by, or I saw you, I just heard about you. And if they drill down a little bit more, maybe they say it's from Google. It's like, okay, was it really Google? Was it being like, we don't really know. And so it's okay. We can have some ambiguity there. So Welcome Home is where we do all of that reporting and all of the reporting for our ownership groups, which I also do every week and every month. And that having the right tech stack and having it all interconnected, not perfectly, I might add, it's got its quirks, but that allows us to make these decisions. And I wanted to circle back and put a finer point on what you said. I definitely still believe in paid ads. I definitely still spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on paid ads. It's great. But the base strategy for us is SEO. That's the baseline, because that across the board seems to work extremely well. And then we layer on whatever other advertising strategy we need. In addition, because as you know, if you add Google ads to an organic Google search campaign, then it's going to increase both.
For sure.
But sometimes it doesn't. We track that too. We look at that every 3 months or more for all of our communities, which is an exhausting job. But yeah, just to put a finer point on that.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's really it's a layering process, and so you can supercharge your efforts by really pushing more on the paid ads, but you need that foundation with SEO. And the way I always think about it is building a house with SEO compared to renting a house. And so there's benefits to both, but if you can figure out how to integrate, both services and let one guide the other, that's a great match right there. So something that we always discuss on this podcast, and it comes up in every episode, which is AI. Have you been able to leverage AI? It might be machine learning or anything like that into some of this data so you can gather more insights?
The answer is not as much as I would like. AI is this ethereal thing that we're all chasing, trying to figure out how to be as efficient as possible. I use ChatGPT a lot, but that's kind of the boring answer. I've used AI to analyze some spreadsheets here and there, but in my experience, it hasn't done anything faster than I can just do.
Sure.
I'm sure that what I should do is take some time and specifically dedicate to how can I use AI in my role a little bit better. I've used AI to write ebooks. I've used AI to generate images, lots of things like that. But I'm sure that there's many ways that I am missing, and I would be open to learning about more.
No, it is funny you say about marketing. It's always changing. I feel like it's almost like you're trying to jump on one of those merry-go-rounds. You remember those, like when you go to the playground? I feel like you're just jumping on at the right time. And I feel like AI right now is the same thing. So just trying to connect those at the right time can be problematic, but just trying to make it work. And I think that's where we're all at this point. So you spoke about the data, and we spoke about telling a story. Do you have any advice on really trying to marry that data and the storytelling aspect? Because both are so important and you want to really bring those together. But I wanted to see if you had any feedback on that front of how you're really pulling those together just with these long, more complex sales cycles.
I would say one experience that I've had that really solidified this point for me was that you should let the data tell the story, not try and tell a story and fill it in with data. I think that's the wrong order. You can absolutely have and test hypotheses, but if you have some preconceived notion of what is true, you're probably going to be able to prove your point with data. And that is the wrong order to do. So I always try as hard as I can to look at the data and say, okay, I think that this is true. Let me literally write it down as a hypothesis with my team. And okay, what do we need to do to test that hypothesis? And then go from there and then tell the story with data. But I think that the order is important. And then as far as what story the data tells, just trying to be truthful with it and
Sure.
leverage it to the best of your ability. For example, we're increasing some salesperson incentives because that's what the data said. Doing stuff like that is I think the right approach.
Yeah, no, that was great insight, and thank you for sharing that. I think that was really good. And continuing this data conversation, and I appreciate your willingness to dig in deep into the data side of this because this is all things that we need to discuss, and I feel like we don't discuss it enough. So think about the data points. What would you say are the most important data points you're tracking? And are there any data points that we typically overlook that you think we need to really focus on?
Yeah, I'd say the KPIs that I look at most when I'm evaluating the effectiveness of anything that I do, it's obviously leads, tours, and move-ins, also conversion rate. But beyond that, it's cost per move-in, length of stay, and average lifetime resident value. And we calculate that by taking the RevPOR. I divide it out into a daily RevPOR, but anyway, taking that and expounding upon that and the length of stay and the number of move-ins, I can kind of estimate those numbers, and then we can rank order them and make decisions. Are we spending money where it is most efficient, or is there a hole that we should be spending money on that we're not? So back to your question about the story that the data is telling. Sometimes it's not super clear, and like you said earlier, sometimes you just don't have the data. You have to turn the floodlight in that direction and maybe throw something at it, and it doesn't always work. And to my team's credit and to my leader's credit, there's no ego there. It's like at our team, it's like, okay, well, we tried this and it didn't work, so we're gonna go with something else.
Yeah. No, again, that's to the credit of the leadership in that willingness to be flexible and not. I mean, there you want to hold people accountable, but we know we need to pivot. Which kind of brings me to this question, which I'm always curious about. How do you know when to give a hypothesis or testing a new service line? How do you know when to really give it more time, or at what's that point of cutoff and moving away from it? Because I know that's a tricky balance to find.
It is a tricky balance. Actually, I have a story. Generally speaking, so as a specific example, paid ads, paid search, Google ads especially, we typically say, okay, we need at least 3 months of data, which is an arbitrary date range that we've given based on the industry. Obviously, if you spent $100,000 a month, you don't need 3 months. You can just do a month. But that's not the point. So we kind of say arbitrarily, okay, we need a full 3 months worth of data to understand, and then maybe wait another month or two at least because our sales cycle is so long. Maybe we got a bunch of move-ins on the last day. Who knows? So at least 3 months is the standard for paid ads, let's say. But it definitely depends, and that's why this job is so hard. Is it depends on the market, depends on the specific strategy, depends on what other strategies are happening in tandem with that. Is it omni-channel? Are we doing a bunch of things at once with a similar message? So there's a lot of nuance there, and that's kind of the fun part. But I lost my other thought. There was another thought that'll come back to me.
And no worries. Well, it's funny you're saying that about that stretching of the data. And one struggle I'd say we have in marketing is this is a longer sales cycle, and so you got to mix the passive compared to the high intent, and just trying to see, okay, is this working or it's not? And it might be working, you just don't know it, and so that can be a struggle if by cutting something off too quickly. And so I just that was my 2 cents on based on what you're saying there.
Yeah, the thought came back to me, and it goes to that point, which is we've had instances where we'll have pushback, and the teams will be like, hey, it doesn't seem like it's working. I'm like, okay, well, first of all, here's the data. It does seem like it is, but second of all, we don't know yet. We need a little bit more time. And then there's other instances, like one of our communities, I won't name them, I suppose, but one of our communities, we ran the ads for 3 months, the paid ads, and it didn't really seem to be like the results were pretty lukewarm. We track the nominal numbers, how many leads, tours, and moves we got, but also the percentage change over time, before and after, and also before and after seasonally adjusted. And we recommended that we keep running ads because we didn't feel like we had enough data to know for sure. Well, a week or two after that, that we were getting some pushback, and the team was like, we're getting higher in occupancy. We're approaching the mid 90% range, and we think we can deploy this money better by doing this, or that. And normally rigid me would be like, oh no, we need to run out the experiment. And in fact, that's what I've said to many others. But in this instance, I saw the point and I was like, okay, yeah, I suppose we can end it early. We've collected the data. We think that we have a better perspective. So anyway, there's just so much nuance there, but that was a good example of what you were describing, I think.
Yeah, I think so much I feel like in marketing like we're speaking about the data side, but it goes back to kind of what we spoke about earlier, which is just getting ourselves grace through this, because it's going to be a lot of testing and seeing what's working, what's not, but knowing that's not the final outcome, because it could work this year, next year, it might be a different thing. So just continue to evolve and try to integrate this data. If going back to the data side, since this is the common theme of this conversation, that data has to start somewhere. And so I find the one question I always ask is, how do you keep that data clean? And I think a lot of that goes back to the salespeople who are plugging this data into the CRM platform. So how do you encourage your sales team to keep that data as clean as possible?
Yeah, number one is to have a good system. And I'm actually the reason that we use Welcome Home. It was years that we're using another CRM. and before that another. I have exposure to all of them, but I lobbied for years that we could get a better system, and finally I was let off the leash, so to speak, and I did a ton of research on all options, and Welcome Home was for sure the one. I don't mean this to become a Welcome Home commercial, but I do love those guys. And so having the right tool that is both powerful and intuitive, we always say garbage in, garbage out. If the system doesn't make your sales team more efficient, then it is useless. And so to answer your question, how do we keep the data clean? Step one, have a good system. And then step two, there is a line there. And I always say this when I do all of the onboarding for all of our sales and marketing teams. There is a line between speed and accuracy. The more you put time into the CRM, the more data you collect, the more you'll be able to use it to segment and understand your lead pool. But there's also a balance of speed there. And so hopefully the system makes it easier to be fast. But I personally leave that up to the sales teams because they know better than me top down. So it's a mixture of those things, and then just constantly referencing it. They know that we use the CRM constantly. We know that they use the CRM constantly. And so we're all working. It all goes back to what we said in the beginning, which is we are here to serve our seniors. And I am here to serve our salespeople who can then serve our seniors. And so if there's a better way to do it, that's one of our values at Avista. We believe there's a better way. If there's a better way to do it, then I am open ears, and let's do that. So right now we're all on the same team. We're all working together, sales and marketing, to serve our seniors, and that's what matters most.
Yeah, that's great. With the salespeople, I get it. We all get busy trying to take care of things, but one thing I've learned is if we explain the why behind it, it's not busy work, it's not overly administrative, but this is going to help us as we continue to move the needle, which is going to ultimately help you in sales, and just make sure everybody's on like you said, we're all on the same page. We are serving one another in this effort to ultimately serve seniors and their families, and I think that's really important to highlight. So thank you for that. So we discussed a variety of topics from paid ads to storytelling through data and really having the clean information in that CRM platform. Is there anything that we didn't discuss in this conversation that you think it's important to highlight, or something that people don't discuss enough when it comes to marketing, analytics, and data, specifically in senior living?
I would say just leave your ego at the door, and that's easier said than done. I can say that because of my leadership team, which has my back, and I know that they do. But there's no room for ego. There's no reason for ego. It's only going to hold you back. If you're wrong, admit it. I'm wrong all the time. It makes me stronger. So just check your ego at the door.
That is really good stuff. I think it's something as when we lean into things and we push to try new things, it's okay to explain, to back out of it as well. And if you have the right intentions, people will hear that. And I think that's really good parting advice. So thank you for that, Carsten. Thank you for joining us today. I really appreciate this deep dive into all things data and marketing and senior living. My last two questions, are you going to be attending any conferences this fall?
Yeah, I'll be in Smash this year, and I hope to see you there.
Awesome. I'll be there. I know a lot of people who are listening will be there. Last thing is, where can people find you to learn more about what you're doing?
Find me on LinkedIn, I suppose.
Okay.
Yeah.
LinkedIn seems to be the common place, especially in senior living. So no, that's great. Carsten, thank you again for joining us today, and look forward to seeing you in Las Vegas for Smash.
Okay. Thanks so much, Larry.
Appreciate it. Thanks for joining us on this episode of The Move In. I hope you took as much away from my conversation with Carsten as I did. Before we close, here are 3 actionable takeaways that I made notes of during this conversation. First, prioritize clean data. Make sure your CRM and reporting systems are accurate and consistent so your numbers can guide real budget decisions. Second, test, measure, and adjust. Treat every campaign as a hypothesis, give it time to prove itself, and pivot when the data points you in a better direction. And third, marry storytelling with metrics. Use data to uncover what works, but always connect emotionally with families who are making life-changing decisions. Thanks again to Carsten for joining me for this conversation and reminding us how powerful data is when it's clean, trusted, and paired with the right systems. And until next time, let's go create some meaningful connections.